Hello, and welcome to another EnglishScrum video lesson. I'm Andy. Today, we're going to talk about what I think is the most important thing for any English learner, whether you are a beginner just starting to speak or a very advanced learner who has been speaking English for years. Today, we are going to talk about communication strategies, by which I mean exactly how to react and what to say when common communication problems come up during an interaction with a native speaker. This is rule number 1 when you are speaking to a native speaker, because no matter what your level, and whether you are in a business situation or a casual situation, I can guarantee that at some point there will be communication problems. For example, in a business situation, you might be listening to your boss in a meeting, but not know a particular word that he or she uses. Or in a casual situation, you might be in a cafe and not be able to catch exactly what your friend just said. These communication problems can happen in a very high-pressure business situation or in a very relaxed setting. They could happen at a remote meeting for shareholders, or they can happen on an airplane when you are ordering a drink from a flight attendant. Because communication problems are guaranteed to happen, no matter what your level, I cannot express how important these communication strategies are for you and for the person you are speaking with in the conversation. If you can master these communication strategies by watching this video and practicing with your English teacher, then your English learning journey will be very smooth and enjoyable, with many meaningful interactions along the way. So let's learn these communication strategies today and practice them every time you talk to an English speaker. This video is special. It is designed to be studied along with an English teacher. If you are a student and you want to study these communication strategies, please watch parts 1 and 2 before your lesson. Then go to the blog post in the description below and do the speaking activities with your English teacher. They can give you feedback about how you are doing when you try to use these communication strategies. If you are a teacher, you can assign parts 1 and 2 of this video as homework. You can check your students' pronunciation at the end of part 1 of the video in order to make sure that they speak well. Then, you can use the speaking activities in the blog post right away in your class. Here's the video flow. First, we have part 1. The explanation. I will talk about some do's and don'ts when speaking to a native speaker. Then, I'll introduce the 7 most common communication problems and the 7 communication strategies for each problem. I'll show you the form of the 7 phrases, and then we'll practice pronunciation. Then in part 2, we'll do some practice. Are you ready to learn these communication strategies? All right, let's get started. Okay, first, let's cover some do's and don'ts when speaking with a native speaker. The following advice is crucial when you communicate with anyone in English. Let's start with the 3 do's in order. Step 1. First, when a communication problem happens, Realize that it is a communication problem. Step 2. Identify what the problem is. Step 3. Finally, react to the problem by using the appropriate communication strategy. It sounds really simple and easy to remember, but actually doing these steps requires practice. Every interaction that you have in English is an opportunity to get better at going through these 3 steps. Okay, now that we know the do's, let's cover the don'ts. Number 1, don't panic. Number 2, don't freeze. Number 3, don't start talking to yourself in Japanese. Number 4, don't start talking to the person in Japanese. Number 5, don't take out your smartphone and try to translate every single sentence. 6, don't ask someone for a translation for every single sentence. If you do any of these things, your interaction in English will fail, so please don't do them. But here is the good news. If you remember the 3 steps in the do list, then you won't do any of these don'ts. Now, let me introduce the 7 most common communication problems and 7 communication strategies for each problem. Also, I'll show you the grammatical form of the 7 communication strategies, and then finally, we will practice pronunciation. Let's cover them one by one in an interactive way. I will introduce a communication problem to you. Please think about what you would say to solve the communication problem. I'll give you 10 seconds to think about the answer. Are you ready? Here we go. Number 1. If the native speaker speaks too quickly, what phrase can you say to make them slow down? Here is the communication strategy. Could you speak slowly, please? Okay, let's look at the grammatical form of this phrase. Here is the request form. Could plus subject plus verb plus please. Now, let's practice pronunciation for this phrase. Please listen and repeat twice after me. Could you speak slowly, please? Could you speak slowly, please? Number 2. If the native speaker uses a vocabulary word that you do not know, what phrase can you use to ask them about that vocabulary word? Here is the communication strategy. What does the word mean? Okay, let's look at the grammatical form of this phrase. It's a WH question sentence. What does vocabulary mean? Now, for demonstration purposes, let's put the word enterprise into the blank, as though you do not know the word enterprise. Now, let's practice pronunciation for this phrase. Please listen and repeat twice after me. What does enterprise mean? What does enterprise mean? Number 3. If the native speaker uses difficult grammar in a sentence, what phrase can you use to ask them to rephrase their sentence in a simpler way? Here is the communication strategy. Could you rephrase that, please? Okay, let's look at the grammatical form of this phrase. Here is the request form. Could plus subject plus verb plus please. Now, let's practice pronunciation for this phrase. Please listen and repeat twice after me. Could you rephrase that, please? Could you rephrase that, please? Number 4. If you did not hear the native speaker, what phrase can you use to ask them to repeat their phrase? Here is the communication strategy. Could you say that again, please? Okay, let's look at the grammatical form of this phrase. Here is the request form. Could plus subject plus verb plus please. Now, let's practice pronunciation for this phrase. Please listen and repeat twice after me. Could you say that again, please? Could you say that again, please? Number 5. If you know the Japanese word in your head, but you do not know how to say it in English, what phrase can you say? Here is the communication strategy. Let me search a word. For this one, it's okay to take out your smartphone and search one word that you cannot come up with by yourself. But remember rule number 5 from the don't list. Rule number 5 was, don't take out your smartphone and try to translate every single sentence. If you are relying too much on your smartphone, then you are not communicating effectively, and your interaction will fail. So for communication strategy number 5, it's okay to use your phone to search a word if you really can't remember it, but generally, do not rely on your smartphone so much in a conversation. Okay, let's look at the grammatical form of this phrase. Here is the form. Let plus subject plus verb. This form tells the person that you will do something, and it implies that they should wait for a couple of seconds until you are done. Now, let's practice pronunciation for this phrase. Please listen and repeat twice after me. Let me search a word. Let me search a word. Number 6. If you need time to think of your own response, what phrase can you say? Here is the communication strategy. Let me think for a moment. For this communication strategy, you are telling the listener to wait as you think about what you want to say. But after about 5 seconds of thinking, you should say something to the listener again. Remember rule number 2 on the don't list. Rule number 2 was, don't freeze. If you say this phrase and then go completely still like a statue, you will make the listener uncomfortable and your interaction will fail. So don't freeze and use this communication strategy again and again if you need to, until you are ready to continue the interaction. Okay, let's look at the grammatical form of this phrase. Here is the form: let plus subject plus verb. Again, this form tells the person that you will do something, and it implies that they should wait for a couple of seconds until you are done. Now, let's practice pronunciation for this phrase. Please listen and repeat twice after me. Let me think for a moment. Let me think for a moment. Number 7. If you are completely lost in a conversation, what phrase can you say? Here is the communication strategy. I'm afraid that I'm a little confused. The phrase, I'm afraid that, prepares the listener for some unwelcome news. It is polite, and it is a safe way to communicate to the listener that you do not understand what is happening at all, and that the conversation has to restart. After saying this phrase, it is a good idea to use one of the other 6 communication strategies right away in order to get the interaction back on track. Okay, let's look at the grammatical form of this phrase. I'm afraid that sentence. Now, let's practice pronunciation for this phrase. Please listen and repeat twice after me. I'm afraid that I'm a little confused. I'm afraid that I'm a little confused. If you need to, please listen to the explanation section of this video as many times as you need to before moving on to the practice sections of part 2 in this video and part 3 in your English lesson. All right, let's move on to part 2, practice. Imagine that you are listening to me talk to you, but you realize that there is a communication problem. So, please follow the 3 steps from the do's list that we talked about in the explanation part of this video. Do you remember them? Pause the video here and see if you can remember the 3 steps in the do's list. Ready? Here they are again. Step 1. First, when a communication problem happens, realize that it is a communication problem. Step 2. Identify what the problem is. Step 3. React to the problem by using the appropriate communication strategy. Okay, everyone, I'll say something. Try to identify the problem and then react to it appropriately. The first one. What do you think is the best way we can maybe try to market this product? Did you get the communication problem? The problem was the speaker speaks too quickly. How about the strategy? The strategy was, could you speak slowly, please? The next one. The landscape in that country is pulchritudinous. The communication problem. The native speaker uses a vocabulary word that you do not know. The communication strategy. What does pulchritudinous mean? The next one. Despite my arduous efforts, I couldn't follow the intricate details of what the professor was attempting to express. The communication problem. The native speaker uses difficult grammar in a sentence. The communication strategy. Could you rephrase that, please? The next one. The recipe calls for a pinch of nutmeg, 75 grams of sugar, 200 milliliters of milk, and 100 milliliters of cream. Communication problem. You did not hear the native speaker. Communication strategy. Could you say that again, please? The next one. In this one, you cannot remember the English word for these. The communication problem. You know the Japanese word in your head, but you do not know how to say it in English. The communication strategy. Let me search a word. The next one. Tell me about the most challenging thing that you have ever had to do in your entire life. The communication problem. You need time to think of your response. The communication strategy. Let me think for a moment. The next one. In corporate finance, contingent convertible bonds, or COCOs, pose complexity. Their conversion mechanism, tied to triggers, challenges traditional understanding. While offering benefits like regulatory capital relief, their contingent nature raises investor risk. Mastering COCOs is crucial for navigating the dynamic landscape of modern financial markets. The communication problem. You are completely lost in a conversation. The communication strategy. I'm afraid that I'm a little confused. Good job, everyone. You got it. Now you're ready to practice using these communication strategies in your next English interaction. Remember, everyone, if you're a student and you want to study these important communication strategies, after watching parts 1 and 2 of this video, go to the blog post in the description below and do the speaking activity with your English teacher. They can give you feedback about how you are doing. If you are a teacher, you can assign parts 1 and 2 of this video as homework, and then you can use the communication strategy speaking activity in the blog post right away in your class. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and we'll see you in the next video.